Today, I want us to talk about building a leadership grid for development.
Family, multiplication, restoration. I'm Dhati Lewis. Join me, Noah Oldham and Heiden Ratner, as we come to you from Atlanta, St. Louis, and Las Vegas, as we seek to add value to your church planting journey. We'll have real-time, authentic conversations that are relevant to the life of the church planter and pastor. Join us as we hear from leaders of this movement from across North America and discover what it really takes to plant churches everywhere for everyone.
Welcome to another episode of the We Are Send Network podcast. My name is Noah Oldham from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm here today with Dhati Lewis from Atlanta and Heiden Ratner from Las Vegas. Brothers, excited to see you again today.
What's up, man?
Honored.
Good to be here.
Back at it. Let's go.
Well, hey, guys, we're going to jump in again to this format that we threw out a few episodes ago called the 3x3, an opportunity for the three of us to take a subject on and each have three answers that we offer. I think from this, we get a breadth of material, a breadth of answers for planters who are all out there from different backgrounds, different themes, different emphases in their ministry. They can pull a lot of stuff from this. And so since we're planting churches everywhere for everyone, I think this can be helpful. Today, I want us to talk about building a leadership grid for development. I've heard Dhati say that discipleship isn't a ministry of the church, it's the ministry of the church. And so it means everything comes out of and flows into discipleship. And one of the greatest needs of any church and any church plant in particular is the need for more leaders, raising up more leaders. So we have to think about it through the lens of discipleship. And so for me, it's what do we need to look for in leaders, but what also are we seeking to develop in leaders as we push them to follow Christ and grow in him. And so I want to talk today about a leadership grid. So what are the three things that you look for and are you trying to develop within leaders in your church? We're going to take this one at a time. And so, guys, I'll just kick it off. I'll get it started here. My number one in my leadership grid is good. The word good. And what I mean by that is competence, the ability to accomplish the task for which we are asking them to take on. So if it's an elder, somebody who can do that well. If it's a deacon, somebody who can do those things well. If it's a Sunday school teacher, someone who can do those things well. I want to help develop that capability and competency in them, or I want to look for it. I don't need somebody who is not a good singer singing in the worship team. That's not good. We get that, but I feel fear in so many other areas of the church. We're putting people into areas where they're not competent yet. And so number one is good for me. What about you, Dhati? What's your number one?
I would say my number one is aware. And when I think about the idea of aware, I'm thinking, spiritually, physically, emotionally, they're able to be present. We do a lot of work here at Blueprint is about being emotionally present, and having to, just being open. I think a lot of times as leaders and as people, when I'm looking for people, like we do a good job at being transparent, but we do a terrible job at being vulnerable. And the way I would say the difference between the two is that transparency is I'm going to share some stuff with you, but I'm not going to give you anything that really can hurt me. But vulnerability is that I'm going to share stuff with you that it can actually hurt me. And I think vulnerability is a key leadership because people are not looking for perfection. They're looking, are you good? Can I struggle with you in life and struggle well with you? And so I would say there's people that are aware about who they are, who they're not, and just in all those areas. So that's what I would start off with.
Yeah, I love that. Self-awareness. Yeah, that's good. That's good. What about you, Heiden? What's your number one?
My number one is honor. I'm looking for people that are honoring, that have a demonstration of honor toward the church, to the Lord, to me as a leader in their lives, and my wife as well. When we just start to sniff honor around people, I just start to think, this is a leader right here. This is a rising leader. We can teach some of these other things. But when I just sense that this person is honoring with their communication in person and maybe in private, I think there's so much power that follows honoring leaders, and honoring with their words, honoring with their presence. It's hard to be dishonoring around honoring people, just start to feel weird. And so I think that's the number one characteristics that we first start to look for. This person's got a spirit of honor on them. We can go far with that person.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
Romans
the first.
12:10, outdo one another in showing honor. That's good.
It.
Yeah. So number two, then my number two is godly. Number one's good. Number two is godly. And this has to do with character for me. Like, I want to make sure, I don't care how good somebody is at something, they can be competent as far as competence goes, but if they don't have godly character, then they've often forfeited the right to use those gifts in the church. Because what I believe is leadership in the church equals influence. Leadership is influence. And I don't want people influencing other people if they're not godly, because they are going to do what Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. I think the principle is clear. I'm going to follow you no matter what you're doing if you are a leader in my life. And so I better be sure that I'm following Christ so that people following me are going to follow Christ as well. And so godly is number two for me. And I've seen this be the one that I think we've made too many mistakes in the church world. You let people who are not godly have positions of influence just because they're really, really good. And church planner, you're listening, you are going to come to this fork in the road if you haven't already. Somebody who's really gifted at music or leadership or something you really need done in your church, and they have a character flaw, and you're going to have the temptation to put them in a position, and you got to wait. You got to wait till godliness is developed. I would say so. Good and then godly. Dhati,
that's
my man.
Yeah, that's a good one. Dr. Crawford Loritz used to always tell us, tell me, he was just like, beware of allowing your abilities to take you to a place where your character can't keep you. And I think what you're saying is that's spot on right there. Is this when our giftedness takes us to a place where our character can't hold us is a dangerous place. So that's a great one. I would say my second one would be already doing it. And I think, in any leadership, what I've learned is that you can put a title on someone, if a title doesn't make anyone do something that they're not already doing. Right. And so what we like to always do is just like, we try to find the people who are already doing it. Right. So meaning like, who's already eldering, who's already like worshiping, who is like already leading, regardless of if you put them on stage or not, who's doing it naturally. And so we're constantly looking out and doing that. And I think one of the things that we can also recommend in this is that we need to stop looking just for what we would consider the called, and we need to start looking at the qualified. And what I mean by that, this is something that actually I learned, put some words by Clint, put some words for it, is that there's a lot of people, that are doing the work, but they don't necessarily feel called to a work or whatever. They're leading in the congregation worship. Like, they're the person that people are looking at when it's like, man, like they're worshiping. They're the person who's always meeting with other women in our church or meeting with other men in our church. It's like, man, but they don't feel like called, because a lot of times people get spooky about callings and all that. It's just like, but it's just like, hey, I don't know if you're called or whatever to this, but what I see is that you are exhibiting, you're doing what we need in this person. Would you consider like coming and being a part of this? And so I would say already doing it.
That's really good. I recently reread a book that talks about the 4 callings. And number 4, the last calling, is the calling to some sort of ministry position. But number 1 is the call to salvation. The call to discipleship is number 2. The call to service is number 3, using our gifts for the glory of God. And then only number 4 is the calling to something what we might call the official call. And we remind people that all of life, every Christian is, and that's good. They're already doing it. We're not going to fail there. Yeah. Heiden, man, number 2 for you, man. What's it?
That's great, man. Well, there's probably going to be a little bit of overlap, but I would say the word that comes to my heart that we're looking for as a team is ownership. People that have an ownership of their walk with Jesus, and ownership of their relationship with the house, with the church, ownership over their godliness, like you said. And I think ownership over the vision in our church. So our mission at Walk Church is to free people to walk in Jesus. We know that Jesus does the freeing through us. But I love finding people in our church that are owning that vision, owning that mission. Like Dhati said, they might not have a title, they might not be getting paid, but they're owners anyway. They're owner carriers. So they're in the city, they're at their workplace, they're in their domains, but they just own the heartbeat of our church. And when we see people that already have that ownership, like, man, let's reel you in and let's disciple and develop you, because you're a leader. And so that's the second one for me, ownership.
That's good.
Ownership. Yeah, man, once people get that vision, they're going to be a leader. You want them to influence, put them in front of people, because they're not looking at you and saying, well, Pastor Heiden's excited about the vision because it's his, but it's this person's excited about the vision because they own it. It's deep down in their bones.
You get around owners, right? Like owners of a business, owners of something, a home, they care about that mug, right? They're like, they're protecting it. They're leaning into it. They're giving toward it.
Yeah.
And so, I think that there's value when people have that ownership. I think, again, you can go, people that are still part of our church now 5 years later that were in the beginning is because they owned it in the beginning.
It's good. I've seen churches go as far as to call their members owners. They don't call it membership. They call it ownership. And
that's good right there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Number 3. So as any good Baptist preacher, I got to put everything in an alliteration. So it's good, it's godly. Number 3 for me is gospel-centered. I'm looking for people who are gospel-centered. I'm looking to shape people into those who are gospel-centered. And for us, that is an issue of chemistry. We describe ourselves as a gospel-centered missional church. And so what this means is somebody can be good, they can be competent, somebody can be godly and have godly character, but they don't have a view of the world and the view of life that views things through the lens of the gospel. They may not be as gracious towards outsiders. They may have a different view about how we apply scripture to an individual's life. They may be a different part of the kingdom. They may be somebody that's considered more fundamentalist or somebody that's a little bit on a different stream. We say we are gospel-centered. At our church, we say we are growing to know, love, and follow Jesus together by his grace. And that grace is emphasized. Are we doing this with grace? Are we doing this because of grace? And so we want people to be gospel-centered. And so I kind of measure that with people as I watch them in their leadership decisions. Like, how gracious are they at the faults of those around them? Their team member drops the ball or their leader drops the ball. How do they respond? And how do I teach them to respond? So gospel-centered for me, man, I want them to see everything through the lens of what Christ has done for us and how that should shape our chemistry as a team. So good, godly, gospel-centered. Dhati, number 3 for you, man.
Yes, so not to be outdone by you, Noah, I'm going to stay with the A's. And so I said aware, I said already doing it. And then the last one is going to be the aims. The aims. Are they committed to the aims? Like, are we aimed in the right direction, the same direction? Because a lot of times, you can have people with great leadership qualities, but if they're aimed at a different direction that's not the same aim as you as a leadership, then basically what you're going to end up causing is a schism or division within. So like, are we aligned? And so at our church, we talk about kind of this idea, a call to membership, a call to discipleship. And so we're aiming at gospel-centered believers, responsible siblings, indigenous disciple makers, generous stewards. And and we wanted to ask the question, how can whatever we're asking this person to do help us to meet these aims, and are you committed to doing that? So I would just say like they have to be committed to the same aim. They have to be on the same track and be playing from the same playbook. And I think that's critical.
That's good. That's
strong. Good. Yeah. It's good. Well, we'll keep our little creative phrases going. I mean, my last one is a T. So I don't know if you saw what I did there. We're looking for leaders that are hot. That's right. These leaders are hot. This last one is a T. It's going to be a little bit corny, but we're looking for Tiggers. And what I mean by that, if you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh at all, you got Eeyores and you got Tiggers. You ask Eeyore to do something, it's like, maybe, drag me there. I'm going to be a bad attitude, pouting the whole time. When you ask Tigger, Tigger says, there's nothing that Tigger can't do, right? He's bouncing around. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to step into the room. And not everybody's a Tigger, no doubt. Some people are a little bit more introverted, but still are honoring and still are owners. And those are people that we're looking for. But I've found that people that are Tiggers, we want to also find those people and say, okay, look, we got to disciple you. We got to get the word in you. We got to make sure that you're godly and your character is able to, like Crawford said, like Dhati said, keep at the same pace of your energy. But I've just found people that are Tiggers, man. Those people want to get stuff done, and I got to keep up with them. And so I was debating between Tigger or teachable. Either way, it's a T. Find that Tiggers are teachable too. So those are my 3.
We got three.
Honoring owners, Tigers. Yeah.
Honor, owners, Tigers. Man, we got 3G leadership. We got AAA leadership. We got hot leaders. Here's the point of all of them, I think, is that there's intentionality, that there's something behind it. There's a thoughtfulness in it. There's an aim that we're shooting for. And I think pastors and planters, we've heard it before. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And so we wonder, like, why are there no leaders? Why is nobody rising up? Why do we not see anybody we can hand things off to? It's because we're not developing them. And so developing them is super important. Going that avenue then, before we close, I would love for each of us to be able to share our favorite leadership resource or a helpful leadership resource for people to check out that has blessed us, has challenged us, has helped us, maybe even in the development process of leaders. I'll go ahead and start. I've got one that I've been using in my leadership cohort. So we've started this program in our church where we take a 9-month year kind of calendar beginning in the fall, go all the way through the spring. People that want to grow in leadership have opportunities to both learn, be poured into, and then exercise leadership in the church. And we've been studying Leaders That Last by Dave Kraft. I just reviewed that for my leadership cohort. And this book is phenomenal because it talks about all the aspects of the life of a leader, beginning with the power, it coming from Jesus Christ, life with him, and all the way through. There's several categories. It ends with pacing, how to pace out your leadership. God wants you to lead for the next 50 years, not the next 5. So pace it out. So it's a really helpful, practical book on learning about your purpose and your priorities and how to really give yourself to the mission of Jesus in the local church. And what's interesting about it is written by a guy that was at a church where his pastor, his leader, did not last. And the cover of it is a cemetery with a blank spot for future headstones. And it's just kind of a testament that you can even have leadership gurus in your church, and you might still fail as a leader if you don't watch.
That's real.
Leaders Who Last by Dave Kraft. What do you guys got? I'm
putting that on my phone right now because I need that on display for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say for me, I mean, I was wrestling with there's so many good ones, but I think one of the things that I'm just kind of in a place right now where I'm trying to encourage our leaders is a book by Dan Allender, and it's Leading with a Limp. And I think just at the core of it, I can just kind of summarize it in this way. At the core of it, it's a book about, like, a lot of times we want to lead out of a kind of a victor mindset instead of leading out of our humanity. And this really just being able to embrace our humanity. And, people are not looking for perfection. They're looking for you to be able to struggle well. So leading with the limp is, I think, what is something that I would recommend.
Awesome.
That's great. Yeah, so good. Well, since we're on the podcast, I would just say I would recommend 2 other podcasts that maybe you can just do different podcasts throughout the week and you could get some different good content. One is a familiar name that you might know, Pastor Vance Pittman. That's our sending church here in Las Vegas, Hope Church. Pastor Vance has a great podcast just called The Leadership Podcast with Vance Pittman. Also, Craig Groeschel, pastor of Life Church, has another great podcast that focuses in on leadership. He has a lot of guests come on, and I've got some really good leadership nuggets from them. And then I would just add a book as well called Replenish. This book, Replenish, is written by a guy named Lance Witt. He served with Pastor Rick Warren for over 20 years at Saddleback Church, and just a really good book. It helped me do that exact word, replenish, especially in seasons where I was feeling a little bit more empty. And so, yeah, I think that would be helpful for you as a leader.
Well, brothers, thanks for the time today. At Send Network, we want to see a healthy, multiplying church in every community across North America. Emphasis on healthy. And one of the great ways to make sure that a planter and a pastor is healthy is to make sure they're raising up leaders alongside them that can shoulder the load with them. And so I think this is going to be helpful to planters and pastors out there as they apply it and they, with intentionality, come up with their own grid. So guys, thank you for your investment in them. And as you're listening, if you want to know more about church planting with Send Network, you can text the words Send Network to 888-123, Send Network to 888-123, or check us out at sendnetwork.com. Until next time, we are Send Network.
Boom.
You have been listening to We Are Send Network, a resource of the North American Mission Board. For more information about today's podcast and other relevant resources, visit sendnetwork.com.